What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Okay, let's do a little thing we call the mailbag. @John Middlekauff, @John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire in those DMs. Get your questions answered here on the show. Again, it's just my name. Fire in the DMs. And we will start with Patrick. Question for the bag. Schefter today reported that McLaurin will not take less than $33 million a year. And that's the deal that DK just got from the Steelers. Schefter said he wants considerably more than that. Terry is a better player than DK, in my opinion. So starting with that number makes sense. It does not seem like the Commanders agree. Given what you know about Adam Peters and his background with the Patriots and the Niners, who seem to have plenty of these kind of holdouts in recent years, how do you see this playing out? I think this is complicated. You know, I think we discussed earlier when you come into a situation and you really like the player. One, you know, the Chargers giving Slater a lot of money is not, every single coach in the history of the league would have done that. I think Courtland Sutton's a better example. Sean Payton comes in, he gets this young quarterback, and immediately his young quarterback has a rapport with Sutton. Now, as of recording this, I haven't seen the guaranteed money, but he got like 4 years, $95 million or whatever, right? So under 25 a year, which always factors into the guarantee. So it's a relatively easy deal to do if you really like the player, you like the guy, and you go, we're getting this guy under market rate. You know, with the top guys, he's $6, $7, $8 million off the top guys, and we love the player. He knows our scheme, and we feel at 28, 29 years old for the next several years going to be in the prime of his career. I think when you start talking $40 million a year, it's like, I'm sorry, I'm out. I get $35 million a year. Let's just say like that would wet his beak. You give me $35 million a year. So let's just do the math. Is he signing like a 2-year extension? Let's just say they'd guarantee every penny. 2 years, $70 million every penny. Like, do you feel comfortable given, again, a really good player, and I get DK got that. I think the Steelers giving him that type of money is kind of crazy, right? I do think that Terry McLaurin is a really, really good player, but I think you got to be very, very careful. Like, is Terry McLaurin a top 6-7 wide receiver in the league? You know, probably in the discussion last season, which was his best year ever, but no one would take him over the top guys. So it's like you're going to pay him more than the top guys who are younger than him, and he wasn't my guy. I just think these are the type of questions you start asking yourself. The problem is you go, we got this guy on a rookie contract, the quarterback. This guy helps out my rookie quarterback. You know, Debo's pretty big risk. Now, if it doesn't work out, who cares? He's unrestricted free agent. He's gone. What's Terry going to do? Just not play? Obviously, he showed up. He's holding in. He's a high character guy, so you feel good about the person. But I think the situation's I think there's a decent chance they just make him play on the money. Speaking of Washington, is Jayden Daniels the next up in Washington's cursed quarterback cycle? We've seen it before. Rookie quarterbacks take the league by storm, then year 2 hits and a brick wall. RG3, rookie of the year in 12, benched by year 3. Jason Campbell, flashes in 06, inconsistent by 07. Kirk Cousins, took years before consistency. Dwayne Haskins, RIP, 7 TDs, 7 INTs in his sophomore year. Washington's quarterbacks historically crash hard in year 2, and the NFL always adjusts. So, is Jayden built different? I would say, I mean, obviously he's way better than Dwayne Haskins, RIP. Cousins, I mean, was a 4th-round pick. Jason Campbell, little before my time of being super dialed, but better player. RG3 was pretty awesome, but he tore his knee, so he was never the same. I would say he's a better player than all those guys, and I would expect him to have a good year. I think the bigger question is less about the quarterback and more about the offensive coordinator. because like every single time with Cliff, like he has a big year, then he kind of comes back to earth a little bit because teams figure out his offensive scheme. So it's not apples to apples, and I don't pretend to be some schematic genius, but I do think that spread offense in the pros, Chip Kelly, Cliff Kingsbury, it's just when that's your bread and butter, as time goes on, defensive coordinators go, buckle up, Buttercup, because it's fucking on. And we plan on kicking your ass. And I would say that's happened in recent memory to Cliff and to Chip. Now, can they adjust? Can they adapt? We'll see, because there's no excuse. With this quarterback's pretty freaking good. I'd be stunned if he's not really good. For the mailbag, I saw Bill Simmons on his pod with Zach Lowe talking about how talks about expansion in the NBA have slowed because teams don't want to lose money in TV deals because they'd have to share revenue with whatever new teams there would be. Could you see this also being the case potentially in the future of the NFL if they've ever were to expand? For context, Simmons has been banging the drum that the NBA was going to expand because he's pretty dialed in with the owners, league office people. And it was like Vegas and Seattle's going to get a team. And then I would say, based on the last like 6 months, turns out James Dolan, the Knicks guy, has been at the forefront of being anti-expansion and clearly got people to agree with them. And their main stance is we just got a historic television deal. If we add two teams and we go to 32, we'd have the same. Right now they're at 30. They'd have 32 like the NFL. Well, the piece of the pie we get in the national television contract, we have to split up with two more teams. So it's less money coming into us, even if these teams give us a couple $100 million each with an expansion fee. I think it'd even be greater with the NFL because NFL teams are already splitting it with 31 other teams if you own the team. So if we add two more, especially a couple international teams, it doesn't even matter where they'd be at. My piece of the pie gets cut dramatically more because now we're talking 33, 34 teams. So it's even a bigger cut than the NBA would be, right? So I think 1,000,000% the natural reaction to some of these guys, even if there's a greater good big picture, it's hard to not think short term and over the next 3, 4, 5 years, it's going to cost me hundreds of millions of dollars. Again, assuming that's the math. Yeah, I mean, I think that would be the number one. I think there'd be a lot of variables. I think anytime you're talking expansion, there should be a lot of variables besides just the money. The one thing I disagree with Simmons is like the league has never been more talented. It's like, Bill, I've been watching the NBA for 30 years. I feel we've never had worse teams. This isn't an individual sport. It's a team sport. So, yeah, it's like the AAU of the NBA. It's like I'm watching all these teams. Like I feel like all these teams, and part of it is the transactional nature of the sport. It feels like these teams aren't any good. There's like 4 or 5 good teams total, max. Sometimes less than that. In the NFL, you're so predicated on quarterbacks. There aren't enough quarterbacks to go around. So I'd be anti-expansion in both. The NBA does not need more teams. The NFL does not need more teams. So that's where I stand, even before the arguments about the money. Pro golfers drive for show and putt for some dough. And the easiest way to make you some dough, betting on this week's tournament at DraftKings Sportsbook. From the opening round, Championship Sunday, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered with live betting, player props, and so much more. If you've never bet on golfers before, it's easy. You can take them to win, you can take them to top 10, you can take them to top 20. Some guys this week I like. We're making the push toward the FedEx playoffs. Ricky Fowler has been playing good golf. Hammer him to top 20. Max Homa, another guy who is trending, top 20. Matt Fitzpatrick, also playing really well. If you want to get a little more aggressive, top 10. Jake Knapp as well. Just had a good week at the 3M. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Congrats on the wedding and the baby. Big year for me, I know. Question for the pod. I'm a Bronco fan, and I hear all the time in the conversation about Bo Nix how old he is relative to rookie and second-year quarterbacks. It seems like it is constantly brought up, but when the media talks about Jayden Daniels, his age never gets brought up in conversations about him. even though he is literally only 10 months younger than Bo Nix. Might it just be bias for me? You know what I appreciate? And I had this just so hardcore when I was young. And I was like in my peak as a sports fan of like high school into college. You have such a chip on your shoulder for arguments like this. And for me, that's not as tight with like any specific team anymore. Like my my happiness or my daily, and listen, I listen to multiple podcasts on the 49ers. Like I still follow the team closely, but I'm not as emotionally moved by the arguments one way or the other on a lot of the stuff. I miss that. I miss going, this is bullshit. Everyone keeps calling my guy old. Jayden Daniels is 10, they'd be in the same grade. So listen, sometimes you get a perception and you get a way you're going to be discussed, and it's not going to change. Like Jayden Daniels, within a year was like, are we sure the Bears picked the right guy? And listen, I'm sorry, that's a conversation this year. Caleb can shut everyone up, including myself. But right now, like the Washington would not trade their guy. And I don't know how the Bears. Who knows? Early in training camp, but there's a chance by like Halloween, they're like, God, that was a bad decision. Where Bo Nix, everyone's like, this guy should not go in the first round. Sean Payton's crazy. This is nuts. So anytime your first reaction is like, this is stupid, people don't want to believe, right? It's like most people that talked about football or were in the NFL viewed Bo Nix not as a top 15 pick. Hell, most people that viewed him as like third, fourth rounder. It's go back to Kirk Cousins or Dak Prescott or Russell Wilson early in his career. When you're drafted in the third round, half the league didn't even like you as a prospect. So it's like it's hard for you to get the respect. It's Purdy's argument. Same with Jalen Hurts. I know one was a second round pick, one was a seventh round pick, but it's like it's hard for you to shake that. So yeah, I don't really know what to tell you beside it just is what it is. Win games. I was thinking about it today, not today, but over the course of the last week. Is I do think there is some sleeper, like looking at some of the gambling odds. Obviously, the Chiefs have won the division for whatever 7 straight years, but I think the Broncos could be pretty good. I do think they could be pretty good. Um, Last mailbag, you were talking about the fact that having pads for training really do make a difference. So my question is, knowing this year the Chargers got to it early because of the Hall of Fame game with a coach as good as Harbaugh, could you expect an early advantage for them? First month of the season, for example. Hadn't thought about that. Hadn't thought about that at all. But you still get, some of your core guys, Alt, McConkey, Herbert's second year with this group, extra reps. Don't hate that. I don't. I haven't thought about that at all. Could that be a big advantage for the Chargers? Let's look at this from a gambling standpoint. Week 1 in Brazil against the Chiefs. Because the Chargers, most teams they play, I think they're going to have a coaching advantage. The one game for sure they do not have a coaching advantage is the Chiefs. But the Chiefs are breaking in. All signs point to being a left tackle. Josh Simmons, who's repping with the ones. Obviously, some new players. We'll see what happens with the skill guys. Rashee Rice getting suspended. A couple new guys, defense potentially. But yeah, I like where your head's at there. It's good knowledge. Good thinking. Now that Brock Purdy has signed a mega deal and is one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL, is it time for the media to stop covering him like a plucky underdog and start covering him like a franchise quarterback? Guys, this does not, just because you get paid, just because you're Jalen Hurts and you win a Super Bowl, unless you're Patrick Mahomes or like Josh Allen or Lamar, if they just won a Super Bowl, there's nothing to even argue anymore. All these guys, basically everyone beside the top couple guys are going to be argued constantly. It's never going to end. Jalen Hurts would have to win 3 Super Bowls like an MVP to shut people up. Purdy, even if Purdy won the Super Bowl, be like, well, Kyle had his best year ever. Oh, they've hit on all these draft picks. These conversations, the Bo Nix, the Purdys, Dak Prescott, we argued about Dak Prescott for a decade. Now, you could say that people arguing against him were right, but I'm just saying, like, Dak Prescott's going to be argued about this year. Same with Cousins. Unless you're Mahomes, like you're just going to get argued about. Big fan of the show. Do you think it's possible that Cam Ward is absolutely horrible for the Titans? We see a Rosen Kyler Murray situation. The upcoming draft class seemingly has a 3 to 4 player with the same talent as Cam Ward. What are your thoughts? I think Cam Ward is a lock to be their quarterback for several years, and I have a hard time seeing him be absolutely horrible. I really do. Now, how good? I don't know. I don't know how good their team's going to be. Could they be a sleeper this year if he's really good? I do think so because their defense is pretty good, but their GM, who was just hired from the Chiefs, he made that pick. So when you Josh Rosen was the 10th overall pick. So you went from the 10th overall pick to the number 1 overall pick. They took Cam Ward number 1 overall. It was crazy with the Josh Rosen, even though it really wasn't a couple years later. I do think getting rid of the number 1 overall pick after 1 year would be I'd be stunned. I don't think it's going to happen at all. I know you're more of an NFL guy than college football, but you are still very knowledgeable. I appreciate that. Obviously, the NFL pays the bills around here, but I love college football. It's just harder, if you don't follow recruiting. It's easier to follow the NFL than it is college football, especially now with the transfer portal. I was doing college football research and found that dating back to 15, excluding Burrow's LSU breakout year, the champion has come from the top 4 odds favorites each August before the season. LSU was number 6 that year. As of right now, the pool to select from would be Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, and Penn State. I don't buy Ohio State or Penn State, leaving Texas and Georgia in my book. I think there's great value in Texas at plus 650. What are your predictions? I do think the likelihood of Ohio State going back to back, given they lost so many guys on defense and their quarterback. Listen, I've been known to be Ohio State hater. Their team was fucking good last year. I mean, they had the best team money could buy, and they backed it up down the stretch after they lost to Michigan and earned that bad boy. I'm with you. Patricia's coaching the defense. Um, I would say Ohio State. If Ryan Day were to win that, it'd be a hell of a coaching job. I would put more stock into Penn State. I would put more. You could argue Penn State has a better chance than Texas, given just how physically demanding the SEC can be. Uh, and like, this is going to sound crazy. We do have more information on Drew Aller, who actually played pretty well last year. They're returning their coordinators, or I guess they added Knowles, who Ohio State came from Ohio State. He's a PA guy. Their defense is going to be unreal. Penn State's defense is going to dominate this year. Offensively, they brought back both their running backs, their quarterback, their OC, and I'm pretty sure they've added some dudes in the transfer portal at wide receiver. Now they did lose Tyler Warren. I think Penn State's gonna be fucking good. I I'd be I'm gonna pick them to win the Big Ten. Uh, Georgia is Gunnar Stockton their quarterback. I just hard for me to pick them. I would go in rank of Penn State, Texas, Georgia, Ohio State. Obviously, Ohio State and Ryan Day are a better program than Penn State. They've proven a lot more. But it's like this team, they're pretty good. And you see the highlights of LeVar Arrington's kid, who's going to be the next Abdul Carter, and Micah Parsons. Jesus, he's 18 years old. He looks like a NFL player. After a week of Josh Simmons checking all the boxes in Kansas City, even in pads, and there seemingly being no competition at left tackle anymore, is this outcome more of a failure on the league to let such a talent fall to Kansas City and bail them out? Or is it more about how capitalistic of an operation the Chiefs have going right now? Seems like the type of pick where we look up and see him in the Super Bowl next February, and it's like, yeah, probably because Mahomes isn't worried about his blind side anymore. I think two things can be true. One, he's one of the more talented guys in the draft. And if he had been healthy, he's a lock top 10-ish pick. Lock. He was not healthy coming out of the draft. So that right away makes people a little squirmish. The other thing that is true, he had red flags. Now, I wouldn't go as far as like Jalen Carter red flags, but I know he was off some boards. Where I think it benefits the Chiefs is their coach is a little liberal, more liberal with Veach of who's on and off the board, you know? And I think sometimes maybe where a front office would be like, oh, I'm not quite comfortable. Coach Reed goes, we're good. I can handle the guy. It doesn't mean it's always going to work, but I think you got to be careful playing that game, right? Did Atlanta screw up by not drafting Jalen Carter? Atlanta was not equipped to handle that guy. Not at all. So I think sometimes when we play that game, I don't know. I think sometimes it's unfair. He was there at 32 for a reason. He plays the most coveted position on offense beside quarterback, left tackle. So for every team to pass on him, I think there were a ton of question marks. I also think we got to be careful. I is he going to be good? I would probably bet on it, but it's July 28th. I mean, let's we got a long way to go. But he got pretty lucky. I would say it worked out pretty well for him. Now, in the short term, you go 32nd instead of 14th or 10th or 8th. You make a lot less money. But I think in the long term, he can make a lot more money. So the Chiefs, if this works out, um, it'll be a steal. Not even a steal. I mean, he was there. Of course, the Chiefs were going to take him. He's a left tackle. My wife and I just welcomed our son last month as well, so congrats on the announcement of the baby boy. Question for the mailbag. I've heard you describe Philip Rivers and Debo as war daddies. What's your definition for a player that fits the bill, and who would be your all war daddy team? Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, defensive player? We'll limit it to current and recently retired players. I think war daddy is one of those like you know when you see it. And I think part of being a war daddy as someone that you feel comfortable with, and listen, whoever's listening to this, whoever you're a fan of, you know there are certain players on your team that you just feel really comfortable going into a big game with. You know this guy is ready. And I honestly I think the quarterbacks, right, Philip Rivers, he was just listen, win or lose, you just felt good being in the trenches with him. I think it's what makes this top quarterback group pretty special is because I think all of them, now they might not play well, but I'll tell you this: the top four guys, Mahomes, Josh, Lamar, and Joe Burrow, those fucking guys aren't scared a lick. I mean, those are guys that you just feel comfortable going to battle with. I think a war daddy, typically your best players that are your toughest players are going to stand out. So it's like, yeah, I mean, Trent Williams or, Lane Johnson, right? I mean, some of these wide receivers, part of it too is a physicality. Like what made Debo is like Debo will break tackles, right? Like George Kittle, when you watch him play, is a lot different than Travis Kelsey, right? Travis Kelsey's numbers dwarf George's in terms of the receiving game, but when you watch George, there's a physicality that Travis just can't bring to the table, right? He's not going to do what George does. Back to Gronk. So certain position players, McLaurin is like Terry McLaurin is a war daddy. And I think you got to be very careful. Like I'm not going to list. Maybe I'll do my all war daddy team before the season starts. But this is like with the Raiders. Spytek and Pete get there. And I was guilty of this too. I'm like, hey, pivot, kind of restart, trade Max. Trade him 2 1s and a 2. Like you get a haul for Max Crosby. The Lions would trade you a shitload for Max. But I think Pete and John would be like, he is everything we want in a guy. Like Max Crosby is the ultimate war daddy. So the physicality, the toughness, the relentlessness. I think when the lights get the brightest, right? Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football against the best competition, you know that guy, if he's healthy, is going to give everything you have. Doesn't mean you're always going to play the best games. To me, it's about effort, physicality, toughness. It's almost like an intangible thing, right? And there's a hitting aspect to it, especially defensive players like Dre Greenlaw. That guy's a war daddy. That guy is just an old school cut from the 1990s badass. Some of these guys just aren't. Doesn't mean you can't be a really good player and be quote unquote a little softer than other guys. Uh, Awesome. I listen to your podcast every day. Experience is the reason why I side with mostly everything you say. But San Jose is an awesome city. We got the Sharks and a lot of nightlife. The food is amazing, and a weekend here may change your mind. It's just going to be a hard disagreement on my side. I'm just, I'm not a San Jose guy. Uh, my question would have been for my Pittsburgh Steelers. You and especially Colin have been bashing their offseason and trading for DK without having a franchise quarterback. But is it insane to think that they can draft or trade up to a higher position to get a franchise quarterback of their choice? If you had to pick between Drew Aller, Lenore Sellers, or Nika Imalovalova, I can't say that last name, who has the highest upside? I would say right now, as we sit here today, Nico is not even in the conversation to sniff the first round, let alone trading up for. So I would remove Nico. I would say Aller is a very interesting prospect. The taste that he left in our mouths, especially if you had $1,000 wagered on Penn State, and he threw that interception against Notre Dame, we got to bounce back from that bad boy. I don't feel as comfortable talking about Lenore Sellers. I'd be lying if I said I was super dialed in to all of his games for South Carolina. I would say he is a guy. Him and Arch are the guys, and probably DJ Lagway as well. Like really excited to watch this year. Um, but I would say Sellers and Aller are immediately in that conversation of guys. To me, if I'm a Pittsburgh Steeler fan, Rams fan for sure because I got the two picks. The Browns, they got a couple first rounders. I think you're. I mean, you're watching all these guys. Nico as well, but you're watching Aller, Lagway, Sellers, Arch, all the good quarterbacks. Who and any guy that starts playing well, you're keeping an eye on. Probably leaving some guys off. So I'm 19 years old, and I just became the head coach of a West Seattle eighth grade football team. The players seem to look at me as an adult, but my assistant coaches seem harder to convince. So far, all we had is the skill showcase. Any tips for when I go to the first practice to get everybody bought in and behind me, even though I'm 19? You want to rattle one of those assistant coaches' cages? Fire one of them before you even get there. Show everyone who's boss. Just kidding. Don't do that. Unless the guy sucks at his job, but no. I think the best thing you can do, like you can't change your age. You can't change your experience. Just be authentic. Be who you are. I think anytime, like you're dealing with eighth grade kids, they're going to look up to you no matter what. You got them, right? The assistant coaches, who I think it's fair to say, many of them are going to be older than you, some way older than you. Like, just I'd be a little careful of like screaming at them immediately. Not that I don't even know if your coaching style, but don't try to act like a coach that you've seen on TV. Just be who you are. I think anytime at any level, this could be the pros, this could be college, this could be D2, this could be high school football, this could be eighth grade football. You have to be authentic to who you are. I think the best coaches, Nick Saban didn't fake it. That's Nick Saban's personality. Andy Reid, Pete Carroll, they're authentic to themselves. Mike Tomlin, the Harbaugh brothers, you go around. You go Kirby Smart, Lincoln Riley. Be true to who you are. Because if you just act, be consistent, and that's being authentic. If you act like you do normally would every single day, if you know what you're talking about, they'll respect you. So like you're not going to gain respect by screaming at them, by bossing them around because you're the top of the totem pole. But I think you gotta just whatever your personality is, try to be consistent with that. I'd also try to know your shit because the more quote unquote schematic motivating eighth graders actually might be kind of important. Ideally, they're ready to roll if practice starts, but yeah, it's tough. There's not right or wrong way to do things, but I would say anytime you're a younger person and people are answering to you and you kind of start throwing around authority, it's the easiest way. in terms of your fellow workers to get them to turn on you. And if you're going to want to win games in the eighth grade league, it's football. You need a good staff. A question: do you enjoy special teams? A friend who just started watching football last year tells me it's gimmicky and boring, and I found it hard to defend. Why was it an interesting part of the game, even though it is? I found it interesting the NFL has made big changes to it more than any side of the ball in the last 15 years. Well, because offense and defense, beside like officiating the violence, right, the hits, because they don't want to get sued for concussions, like offense and defense is why you watch, right? Like when you play golf, hitting drivers and 7 irons are fun. Putting sucks. Like, yeah, do I care about special teams? No. Like a kicker, punter, kickoff return, like no, it's really boring. I do not care at all. Hell, most NFL coaches aren't that interested. They just want their special teams coach to handle those guys and their kicker to make kicks and their punter to be good at directional punting. And whoever's on the special teams unit to be sound in their lanes and make tackles. Yeah, it sucks. But it's part of the sport. Because let's just say you took it out. And if you got past like the 35-yard line, you can just give a thumbs up, automatic 3 points. You could just start every drive at the 25. Like, it is exciting. I mean, there can be exciting plays, like kickoff block, a punt block, a fake punt. But the overall run of the mill 40-yard punt or 30-yard field goal right down the middle, yeah, it doesn't do anything to me as a consumer. And there is a gimmicky element to it, of course, but it is pretty interwoven and connected to football at this point in time in 2025. Do I see them scrapping special teams? I don't. Maybe one day. I guess you never say never, but there are enough coaches in the league, older coaches, that would definitely fight for it to keep it as part of an integral part of the game, even if it quote unquote can be a little gimmicky at times.